Welcome to Frontline Women, a show dedicated to women on the leading edge of change and culture renewal in America. I'm Dalisia Coppersmith, and I'll be your host and guide as we explore emerging issues and opportunities for women to lead side by side with men every day. So let's get off the sideline and onto the front line right now. All right, it is Hot Topic Day. I'm going to ask a tough question, and we will try to answer this in a way that equips you to handle this situation in whatever ways you need to in the areas in your own life. But can we still talk about diversity? As of right now, we are in the beginning year of a current administration who removed DEI programs, just kind of like lock, stock, and barrel. Just about everything is gone from the federal government. And most people don't know that that also impacted corporations. So it wasn't just the federal government that had to get rid of a lot of DEI programs that were beyond the any quota systems that might have still been left out there. I really don't think there were very many quota systems, but I do think that that was the target. And so if you look at what that has to do with corporations, you might say, well, it has nothing to do with corporations. As a matter of fact, I was at a conference and some of the women I was talking to were shocked that women who are in leadership programs that were designed specifically for them to help them handle their unique challenges, they were actually pulled out of those leadership programs. And even though maybe 20% of the content, in my own leadership program, I think about 20% of the content was directed at helping women with their unique challenges. The rest was leadership development, regardless of gender. However, with the current administration and their policy, and I'll read this actually from the White House website, it's the presidential action was January 20th, 2025, Inauguration Day, ending radical and wasteful government DEI programs and preferencing. And so what they were after, if you've never read this, it's kind of interesting. You could go to the White House website and check it out. But the purpose and policy was aimed at forced, illegal, and immoral discrimination programs going by the name diversity, equity, and inclusion. And he felt that the Biden administration had forced that into all aspects of the federal government in areas ranging from airline safety to the military. It was a concerted effort stemming from Biden's first day in office when he issued Executive Order 13985, advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities through the federal government. So a lot of reasons for President Trump's policy change here, but a lot of it had to do with quotas. And that was such a small percentage of what was under the umbrella of diversity, equity, and inclusion that we've sort of thrown the baby out with the bathwater, as it were. So I don't know which side of this that you may be on. I'm a moderate politically, so you'll see and hear me, during this show, talk with people of all different political stripes. I don't stand for or against anything because of a political party. I look at every issue, every platform just separately, and based on my own experience and beliefs and values and my vision for where I think America should go. That's how I make my choices and what I am for or against. And this show isn't about what I'm for or against. I'm more interested in what you are moved to do and what your responsibilities are in having this conversation where needed in the workplace. So that's what today's show is about. Can we still talk about diversity? And yes, we can. Even those in the federal government, you may have had to stop supporting programs that were previously under the DEI umbrella if they had any whiff at all of supporting one group over another. In fact, in the federal government, there have been so many wonderful stories erased from the websites, stories of, I'd say, diverse leaders, women leaders or, leaders who are races other than white. Those stories were completely taken down from federal websites. And one story in particular was a female pilot, and her peers were really upset that her story was taken down because it wasn't just that she was a woman. She was a talented pilot. And I was really happy actually to see someone post about that. And it was a man, and he was furious to see this happening. Because if you notice, we haven't taken down the stories of white men. And so that has to be addressed somewhere in all of this. But back to the question at hand, can we still talk about diversity at work? Yes. And depending on where you work, you may have to step lightly through it, because even in corporations that do business with the government, which is so many, I mean, it's just countless corporations that do business with the government, they've also been warned to get rid of DEI programs, to get rid of DEI departments and efforts that look like they are trying to give anyone the leg up. So you may be working for a company that's experiencing this shift in culture, this shift in what you can say and what you can't say. This is something that I think all of us should be prepared to play a leading role in our organizations in addressing what these policy changes are, what the limits of those policy changes are, and making sure that we're not just complying with policy beyond what it actually is, because you cannot make effective teams illegal. Okay, that's the main thing that I want you to get out of this episode. This conversation is for you. It's to equip you so that you don't just have to sit there with the frustration of, okay, how do I even say this? Because we can't talk about DEI anymore. Well, we can talk about whether someone's ideas are heard. And this is everyone, including white men. I mean, are we really hearing them? There's a wonderful story that I heard. This is from a gentleman who lives in Florida, has his own business, and he was working for a customer designing an office, and it was an all-female law firm. So he and his crew came in, and they were consulting with the CEO of this company and some of her advisors, and they were designing what the floors would look like and what the walls and ceilings and all of that would look like. And they chose a specific floor. He tried to advise them against it because he knew that heels were going to scuff this floor and it was going to look terrible, 2 hours after it was installed. But she didn't listen to him. So this is a majority problem, isn't it? It's not just about white men don't listen to people. This is the majority, whoever the majority may be, tend not to listen to people that are not like them. And so we need to root this out everywhere. So what I'm saying right now is that if you are in an organization where there's a specific group, regardless of who that is not being listened to, this is something that has to be discussed. And it's not about DEI programs or quotas or any of those things. It's about effective teams. It's about good decision making and hearing all perspectives. So let me tell you what happened with that law firm's offices. They installed the flooring that this CEO wanted. They wore like the surgical booties because they knew they didn't want to leave scuffs, and that floor was going to have scuffs, regardless of what kind of shoes, but especially with heels. And so they carefully backed out of the room. She saw it, looked good, they went away. And of course, very shortly thereafter, she called and said, there's a problem with the floor. And he had tried to tell her, but she wouldn't listen. And so there were other things with the design that he told me about where, he just really contorted himself in every different way, trying to explain to her, like based on his experience, she was not going to be happy with her choice, and she wouldn't listen. So this happens to women all the time, and we feel like it only happens to us, but that's not true. So if we can't talk about DEI, we definitely have always been able to talk about whether teams effectively communicate with each other, solve their conflicts, take all ideas into consideration, and make decisions. So that is the umbrella that I would put this under now, because it isn't about us increasing quotas and things like that. Nobody wants quotas. This is about effective teams, effective decisions, and effective leadership. So I ask women to try to be the balance that creates better leadership in your organizations. And whether you are leading a team or you're part of a team, if you have the blessing and the curse of sitting on an executive team, you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes the room can feel very out of balance, and it can take a lot to be heard. But we don't need to talk about gender or race, age or degree types, or all the different reasons that people don't listen to each other. But we have to make the undiscussable discussable. We have to say, I'm not sure why this is happening, but I'm experiencing a different meeting than you are right now. I use the example sometimes of an executive that I saw try to speak up 4 times, and she was one of 2 executives in the room. They were being briefed by everybody else. If you are an executive in the room and you try to speak once, not a big deal if somebody speaks over you, right? But what if you try to speak up a second time and then a third time, and people are still talking over you? And by the way, you are the only, woman in the room. Besides, well, I was there, but I was there as a consultant. So you are the only woman in the group, all men. And then you try to speak up a fourth time and you have to shout in order to be heard. Now, that kind of a thing is ridiculous. And when we make inclusion feel like it's illegal, we're really going too far. So what are the words, and this is getting back to you and your role and your responsibility, really, to help your organization have this discussion if it's needed. How can you introduce a way that you can still talk about what's going on and pinpoint what's happening without it sounding like a DEI conversation? Because it isn't about programs. It's not even about policies. It's certainly not about quotas. It's just about being effective with each other. It's about communication and respect. So what are the words that you're going to use today if you see something going on that you know is wrong? If you see, since this show is about women stepping up and not giving up, if you're in the room and a woman tries to speak up and she tries to speak up again and then she gives up, what are you going to do? Now, it's very easy to just say, hey, I think Jane was trying to say something. And that's a one-off, and you can do that and help everybody kind of backtrack and listen to her. But if it's systemic, what are you going to do? Because a lot of times you're not going to go and complain about it formally. You may not even want to say anything that even hints at dissatisfaction, but it's an invitation instead. It's an invitation for everybody to be aware of the dynamic in the room. So invite them. Simple enough, right? Hey, I don't know if anybody else saw this, but I saw Jane was trying to say something and we all kept talking over her. Probably not the way we want to go with the team. And that's all you have to say. People, I think, are pretty self-aware these days, and they will think back like, okay, my behavior just then was to railroad over her, and I really need to not do that, because we kind of know that that's something that happens frequently and that we shouldn't be doing that. So we don't even have to really call it what it is anymore. We can just simply state what happened, and people will often self-correct. So can we talk about DEI? In some cultures, you really can't. You certainly can't say the acronym. But you can talk about the shared desire to have this outcome, which is that people are heard and people are respected in your organization. So don't be afraid to have the conversation. And remember, make it an invitation, not a punishment. And that's the key to it. But if you're interested in reading a little bit more about the research that I did and some of the things that I found and that I am trying to help women with, there is a link on my website to go to the book page. And from there, you can read a little bit about the book. You can buy it if you want to, but it's called Strong Women Rising: How to Overcome Resistance, Build Trust, and Change Our World. I'll put a link in the show notes as well. Until next time, thanks for tuning in, and thank you for being a frontline leader in your world.